Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for OPE, let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for you know who wanna go, gonna glow.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. We are OPE. I am Iowa Joe. That's Mike Kawano, or what's left of him. Mike, it's been a bit since you've been on, so we're treating it like you're actually a guest host today. So we're we're in the last legs of our draft run up. We're talking about positions that are very low on the totem pole, so there's some of the easier ones to talk about because we can really dig into some deep dives in it and not have to worry about it being a need. So, Mike, what's been going on with you? Tell people why you believe in me high and dry.
So 2 weeks ago, it was my birthday, turned 35. Marisol surprised with a weekend stay at Aulani. That's the Disney resort out here. So um, was catching sun and vitamin D and all that kind of stuff, and making sure my kids don't do anything too stupidly wild or crazy at the pool. But so
And
that
that
was that
vitamin
week.
D did you no good.
No, because I have two plague children, and when they decide to bring home the plague to me and Marisol, we're shit out of luck. So that's what happened last week. And so, you know, as much UV rays as I may or may not catch out here, they do little to nothing for the crap my kids bring home from school. Well, my son brings home from school, and my daughter brings home from being around my son. So, alas, here we are.
Well, like I said, we're in our last little trails where we're kind of discussing what we want to do for, because we've got the final mock, which will be two weeks from this episode. So we've got an episode in between this one and the final mock. We're trying to decide because I don't think either one of us really want to talk about place kickers and punters and long snappers. So we're getting to the nitty gritty. We're almost to the goal line when it comes to the NFL draft in Green Bay this year. Today's episode is going to be quarterbacks. And obviously this is not a huge need for the Green Bay Packers. I was kind of shocked by some comments lately from like Jason Wilde and a couple other. I think it was mainly just Wilde, where he said he views Gutekunst and Jordan Love kind of the same, where they're good, but are they good enough? I was just kind of surprised by that because Goody's had a hell of a job, or done a hell of a job as a GM. I mean, you can question some of this things because if you look at some of his draft classes, have how long are they on the roster, blah blah blah. But really, he's drafted for what the Packers need at the time the Packers need it, and it suffices until they can get other people in there to fill that spot. So he's been able to do a heck of a job to keep this team as a contender. And I think you can say the same thing about Jordan Love, is he's still going through the process. A lot of the guys that we're probably going to be talking about today are the same age, if not a couple, maybe even a couple of them are older than Jordan Love. So Jordan's still got time to go. But again, this is not really a need, but we're going to talk about it anyway because it is a position that, who knows. We were all kind of surprised with the way they went about building the quarterback room, as is with the trade for Malik Willis last year. They drafted Pratt last year, but he didn't end up sticking around. Sean Clifford is floating around somewhere there. So, Mike, what are your opinions on this QB room as of right now?
Yeah, like you said, don't expect much of it. I kind of expect them to stand pat, to take it from I think it was Tom Moore, so whoever inside of the Colts franchise during the height of the Manning era, as they said, like, to question who our second quarterback is. That's concerning about what we do when we're fucked, and we don't practice fucked around here. And realistically, like, I mean, for all intents and purposes, the Malik Willis trade was like, I don't even know how to necessarily grade that trade because honestly, I think from Goot's point of view, he was like, well, shoot, like Clifford still sucks and Pratt doesn't look like he's going to be ready anytime soon. And, some people say like it was great, foresight and blah. I honestly think Goot was like, well, if he goes out and rolls an ankle stepping on someone else's foot, we want to have someone who can, toe the line for us kind of thing. I don't think he was expecting the the outcomes that he did, that Willis was going to go 2-0 in starts and realistically finish off another win when he came in to close the Jacksonville game. So in a sense he was like 2.5-0, so to speak, kind of thing. I think more so he was just like, well, shoot, like we don't want to just absolutely suck donkey balls kind of thing if Jordan gets hurt. And you know, if they go with a quarterback at some point this year, it'll happen for one of two reasons. If someone calls and is like, hey, Goot, we hate our quarterback room. We're not getting Shadur or Cam Ward this year. You know, we're willing to send you a day two pick. And whether that's this draft or next draft, I don't think Goot can say no to that. Like, I think that would be malpractice on his part. And I know some people will say, like, well, Jordan got hurt last year. It was a pretty shit luck injury, and I know it dogged him all season, but you can't turn down a day two pick in this or the next draft because you're concerned about what happened last year. And, like, it's not like Jordan, it's not the like Christian Watson hamstring or the Clay Matthews hamstring kind of incident where it's like this like soft tissue injury that's dogged him. It's sort of like a instance, crappy occurrence injury kind of thing. So I think outside of that, they're not taking someone above like the sixth round. And that's where, like I said, they'll do their usual, like, find the guy with the physical tools and, we'll get him into QB school and stuff like that. But unless that Willis trade happens, I don't expect to see anything done. It'll be like a Pratt kind of selection like it was last year.
And that's the thing, Goody has shown that if the right price is met, he'll make the trade. We saw that with Razul, and and we kind of saw it trading for Malik Willis. Who'd have thought they've given up a seventh round pick for a guy? I do have to go back a little bit though, because there were always rumors that the Packers liked Malik Willis when
Right.
Willis was coming out for that year of the draft. And a lot of people were wondering. I was seeing mock drafts with Malik Willis being taken, and so there was always something there for them to like. And I think just the opportunity arose, and like you said, Clifford is Clifford. He's going to give you some things, but he's not. He's probably not going to be the guy that you can rely on going, to win you games. And Pratt was what he was. I know a lot of people wanted him in the draft, and it was just basically because of his raw tools. He wasn't anything. He wasn't refined enough to start as a seventh rounder. It was going to take him a couple years before, kind of like a Matt Flynn or something like that, where obviously he had more arm talent than Flynn did, but he was still raw and needed to work on things. But yeah, who would have thought that Jordan Love would have suffered the injury he did, and who would have thought Malik Willis would have come out and did what he did? But I think we're pretty set. And if there's anybody out there that has any kind of inkling to say, well, maybe Malik beats Jordan Love out for the starting job, that's not happening. They've given Jordan Love way too much money for that to happen. They've invested way too much time and stuff into Jordan for that to happen. And you also have to remember, for as long as he's been in the league since 2020. So this is what, year 6 he's going into. He's only started for 2 years.
Yep.
And both years he's been injured at some point. So this year 3 should really make or break what he's going to do. So with that being said, we might as well run it the way we've been running things all off season long. Is there anybody in free agency that you would even think of filling the spot? Maybe even if they did trade, let's look at it if they did trade Malik. Is there somebody that you think would come in and fill that role as a backup guy in the event that they trade Malik but they don't draft anybody?
Hold on, let me pull the list up to see who's out there still. I guess Trey Lance is technically still a free agent. Drew Lock is a free
No,
agent
he's
now.
signed with
Oh,
Trey signed with Chargers for a year, I think.
oh, you're right. Yeah. Over the cap, update your shit. If we go down the rabbit hole of, like you kind of brought up with Willis, of the whole, someone that the Packers were rumored to be interested in at the time of the draft. Drew Lock fits that mold. I can't believe he's 29 already. That blows my mind. Or
Yeah.
he's either is 29 or this is his age 29 season. But either way, that blows my mind. If you go the vet
Well,
route,
according to Sport Track, he's 28.3 years old.
yeah.
So
So
he'll
I
be
think it's just that
29
he's
this
going to
year.
turn 29 during the season. So over the
Yeah.
cap does it that other way. If
And
you
I
want to
think you
go
got to
the
throw
vet route,
Carson Wentz out because he
yeah.
took a coaching job.
Oh, okay. There you go. If you want to go the Iowa route, CJ Beathard is still out there.
Yeah, and that's shocking that he's 31 years old. He'll be going on 32 years old. And really, that's a kid that I was surprised that didn't. I was surprised with where he got drafted, but I'm also surprised he didn't get as much opportunity to be a starter because in his limited time, he did look like he had the potential to be a, a starter in the league. But who am I? Uh, but yeah, there's really not anybody in free agency now. We were kind of joking before about like conspiracy theories and that we could bring Aaron Rodgers back to be the backup for Jordan because nobody seems to want to sign him. The rumors were it was down to like Minnesota and Pittsburgh, and moved on per their GM, and Pittsburgh's kind of getting pissed off because he won't make a decision. So it's very limited where he can go right now.
Yeah, and I see it like this isn't a Packers thing because I think it shouldn't be too hard to tell where we stand on that. No, it's not happening. I think Goody, Lafleur, and Love would all have to fall in a ditch and disappear from the face of the earth for that to be remotely a possibility. And the part with Rogers that I'm gonna speak of is the whole like, oh, he could sit out this season. I just don't know how he can do that at this age.
He'll
Like,
be
I know
42
he,
this year.
yeah, he, the all the like whatever he does, whatever to, but like that would be a thing that I would believe Brady could do because he does all of his like diet and sports fitness. Like, if Roger sits out a year, who knows what's gonna be in his bloodstream at that point? Like, I don't,
I don't
I
even
don't know
think
if they're all
Brit-
necessarily illegal by the NFL, but you know what I'm
right.
getting at.
But Rogers was also one of those that was very health conscious when it came to
Yeah,
like prepping, and that was one of the things I remember hearing early on is that he refused to have like his ankles taped because he had like a strong regimen of doing things that he knew that he wasn't going to have those kind of issues. But outside of that, I don't even think Brady could. Now it would be different if they were like 37, 38
yeah,
compared to 41, and what's Brady? He's going to be 44, 45 this year
something
or
like that.
whatever.
Yeah,
But they're getting to the point where it's harder to rebound from things. Trust me, I know I'm getting up there too. I'm only like 4 years younger than Aaron Rodgers, and I can feel it when I injure something. So I don't see how he could sit out.
yeah,
But again, he's running out of places to go.
yeah.
Uh, Jets aren't going to take him back. The Giants signed uh,
Russ.
Russ, and they signed Jameis.
Oh, that's right.
Uh, Cleveland, I don't see him ending up in Cleveland because they've already got so much money wrapped up in rapist Watson. Minnesota seems set to be going on to JJ McCarthy, which is kind of interesting considering He's returning from an ACL injury, and nobody knows how he's doing. Uh, Pittsburgh is the main place right now, but like I said, Tomlin and them seem like they're getting kind of pissy because Aaron's not making his decisions, and that's about it. I mean, uh, Seattle signed Darnold for a big contract. Chicago, but they just drafted Caleb Williams last year. I don't see them taking a shot at him. Detroit's not going to because they've got Goff wrapped up for a bit. Maybe New Orleans. I mean, they've got Carr down there, but
How does that
I,
even work for them? Yeah. Wait a minute.
I Jacksonville, but they've got
No,
Lawrence.
they've got to figure out what Lawrence is, kind of thing. Yeah,
Carolina's not because they got enough money into uh, Young.
yeah. It. You never want to say never, and that everything is set in stone, kind of thing. But that's the only place that seems to like forget like it's not just a needs or a like they're the only place that has an inkling of wanting him at this point. And
Yeah.
as you pointed out, even that he's sort of setting the bridge on fire before he even gets there. So it's like, you know, people are who are
Well, and
they
then he's
are, and
also
so
got to realize that no matter where he goes, they're going to still draft a young kid
oh
because they know
yeah,
they're not going to be able to keep Rodgers for another 10 years.
like
But anyway, we've made it too much into a Rodgers fest, and we got rid of Rodgers a couple years ago. So
I
that would
think
be
we've used up our 10 minutes on him. I think
it's
we've burned
just
the
a
10 minutes.
funny conspiracy that, if he had nowhere else, he could always come home to be the backup. But then you're in the Favre situation where, "Oh, I'm not going to back up the young kid, so
Yeah,
whatever." So let's go ahead and jump into some prospects, some guys that probably could be on the board. And this is not looking at like a Shador or a
yeah.
Jackson Dart or Kim Ward or anything like that because we know that's not a possibility. The only way they're going to take one of those guys is if it's a Brian Brom situation where he's supposed to be a surefire first rounder and he falls, he just takes a tumble.
And if one of the well, Dart's a little different, but if either of Ward or Sanders fall, it's gonna be for a reason that the Packers wouldn't touch him anyways. And
Right.
before anyone says it, this is not OPE saying that we hope this befalls any draft prospect. No, we're just putting it out there that the only way some of these guys will get to Green Bay's range is if the what's the LSU wide receiver's name, Lacey or whatever, the one who was
Yeah.
supposed to be a like top 15 pick, and now it's like, ooh, like is he gonna play football before he's 27 or something? So
Well,
yeah,
if the next team he plays on is like the Mean Machines and the Longest Yard or something, so but and this is me saying something. I could see Shador being like a Johnny Manziel because I think he's got the personality type that he's going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, and I wish he would have went somewhere else other than Colorado because he had daddy behind him too much pumping up that ego. And this isn't saying he's not going to be a good player or whatever. I really didn't watch him. I don't know. But you just sometimes hear some of the things that come out and you see some of the things that are being done and you just kind of worry about it a little bit. Like I said a couple weeks ago for the with or did I say it last week with Andrew that we kind of got onto wide receiver a little bit and we were talking about the kid from Arizona whose first name I can never seem to pronounce. Tet yeah, whatever.
Ted McMillan.
Um yeah, he said in an interview, and I never went back to watch the interview, and I never, so it could be completely taken out of context. But he was asked about film, and he said, I never watch film on myself. I never watch game tape on myself. It's like you're not watching the game film your coaches are telling you to watch. And that's something I could see Shador being is, oh well, I don't watch this or I don't do this or you know, so that has my worry level, but luckily we don't have to worry about that as a Packers fan. That's more as a draft guy worry. So, all right, Mike, there's no Michigan players coming out at the quarterback. There's technically no Hawkeye quarterbacks coming out. Who do you want to talk about first?
Oh, I guess. Okay, the only guy that I could see Green Bay taking before day 3 would be like a Jalen Milrow, and you do it in like kind of a. It's sort of like you'd almost have to be doing it like a Cordell Stewart kind of thing, where it's like you're maybe getting some use out of him at other positions. Not saying that he maybe can't play quarterback later kind of thing, but it sort of turns into he's your like Willis replacement kind of thing. You like he's so athletic that you want to get him on the field and see if you can use him in other ways kind of thing. But like I said, that I don't think Green Bay has the excess of draft picks to spend a pick on a guy like that. So it's one of those where like that would be the only way I could sort of see it happening. But honestly, I just like that's so many loose strings that I'm pulling together to say that that would be the guy they would take before day 3.
Yeah, but that would have to be based purely on just athletic
Yeah.
ability, wouldn't it? And I'd hate to see them spend a highish
Right.
draft pick on just athletic. I mean, let me change that because we see the Packers take high athlete guys, but it's usually at the position they play. Whereas
Right.
Milrose a high athlete guy, but is he going to play quarterback? Is he going to do this? Is he going to do that? I lump him in really with like a Taysom Hill, where he can go out and throw the ball, but you're going to use him more as a tight end wide receiver in a wildcat formation or a special play or end rounds or something. So I had a different name if you wanted to possibly, and maybe this guy would be taken before day 3, but he's more of your athletic type, and that's Brady Cook out of Missouri. And he his all his motions I have are smooth, where you could see him. It was just there was no herky jerky to like handoffs, play action, zip throws, all that kind of things. It seemed smooth. He's got scrambling ability. He tested really high on for his RAS. I think he ran like a 4.59 40.
Yep.
So for a quarterback, that's pretty solid. I question his accuracy sometimes because it's like he either overshoots or undershoots the ball. There were too many times that the ball was like hitting below the knees or over the head. So I question that a little bit. He looks like he's got some solid arm strength, and then like I said, he tested pretty good. Now I reached out to friend of show Joey Van Zumeren because he's the Missouri guy, and this is a quote from him, and it's kind of a long read, so hang in there with me. He's an interesting one to evaluate, right? The fall off in deep passes from 2023 to 24 was just bizarre. He couldn't throw anything over 20 yards this last year, but I think that's a chance teams would be willing to take on him. He also said at the combine that he specifically was targeting that this offseason after his coach tried to pretend like it wasn't an issue all year. Running is obviously good, and he knows when to tuck it down and scramble, especially on third and fourth down. At worst, he's a game manager with an inconsistent deep range. At best, he's a solid reader of defenses, mobile, and can deliver impressive throws at right time. So a little bit of a Sean Clifford, but younger and faster. Now, there's one thing I have to disagree with Joey on when it says that. He says maybe a little bit of a Sean Clifford, but the way he described the deep pass thing and some of the ability things, that's Jordan Love. How many times have we talked about Jordan Love has a strong arm, but he has issues with the deep pass accuracy? He's got the running ability, but he's not like a super fast runner. He knows when to tuck it down, he knows when to hold on to it. And, just reading that and some of the things I saw on there, it makes you think more of a Jordan Love than a Sean Clifford because he's got the arm talent, he's got the rush around a talent, but is there a deep accuracy to him?
Yeah, I think actually, like, yeah, kind of a discount Jordan Love is sort of a good comp for excuse me, oi, is a good comp for Brady Cook. Kind of comes from a similar system. It's a little bit more of a spread, almost run and shoot kind of play style. Like you said, you see the athleticism on the field. He's a solid runner, tough runner too. Maybe maybe at times a little too tough of a runner for his own good, but honestly, I kind of liked how he played at times. There were moments where Missouri got down in games, and then he would lead pretty spirited comebacks. But I think the thing I like about him most is you wouldn't lose throws because of the arm strength. Not like with Clifford where you're kind of like, well, that plays out of the playbook because he can't get the
Right.
ball there. Um, and I do like that he's got, he's not Milrow, he's not Willis, but he's got enough requisite running ability that you're like, okay, if Love gets hurt, we can kind of screw around with the offense and you know do some things that are a little different to create some offense and create ways to move the ball that aren't just like, okay, Brady, drop back and throw the ball 25 plus times in a game kind of thing. So I do like that out of him. And like you said, it's always kind of weird to talk about these kind of players because it's like, okay, we're taking this guy under the guise that we don't ever want him to play. But if he does play, we won't be totally up the shitter kind of thing. So I could see him, I'll put it this way. I would like to watch him play football more than Sean Clifford play football. Like that's how I rate him comparatively as a prospect. So I do think that Cook would be a decent you know, lottery ticket backup quarterback option. Yeah, I don't. It's always so hard to tell with where backup quarterbacks are gonna go because I feel like it almost always is like you have your whoever your surefire top of the first round guys are. Those guys are always gonna go top 10, 15, whatever kind of thing, and then after that you get you sometimes you can tell where those like Jalen Hurts kind of guys are where you're like that's a definitive no one's gonna spend a first round pick on him, but there's too much talent not to take him on like the second round or something. But then usually if you don't fall into one of those categories, it's sort of like Russian roulette in terms of where some of these guys are gonna go because it's like they could go third round, they could go seventh, they could go undrafted kind of thing and stuff. So yeah, it I like you kind of do in terms of how you don't put rounds on guys. I'm not even going to bother putting a round on a lot of these quarterback prospects. So don't worry, we have a visitor. We have a guest podcaster today. She is back.
Oh, there's the little germ spreader.
she's the
um,
she's the aggregator.
Typhoid Mary. But I agree with you, and that's the thing that I struggle with is trying to put a round grade on him, because really everything that you see with Brady Cook, he could be a first rounder because of the athletic ability and the system he's played in and stuff like that. But then again, he could take a slide in the draft. And I didn't do my due diligence. I never look at the ages for these guys, so that could be something that that could hurt because I don't know how old he is and stuff like that. But, you know, who knows? So, is there anybody else you can think of that you kind of want to talk about? Because I've got a couple of guys, but
I guess one that would make a lot of the the Wisconsin Green Bay fans, I don't know which way they would go. They probably mostly want to shoot themselves, but if Goot, screw it, we're taking Graham Mertz. You know, thanks.
She wasn't even happy about that one.
But it's the whole like there. I know Wisconsin fans will definitely say otherwise, but there's talent on his shoulder. He does some. He's able to do some things with the ball. We can point to, was it the O line situations, the receiving situations, all that kind of stuff. But if you're throwing a round seven, we've covered every other base we want to. We want to get another quarterback in the room. Why not see if one of the recent saviors of the Wisconsin football program has anything in the tank to, potentially, like, that's all you're doing is you're just trying to see if you can get someone who can take Sean Clifford's spot at this point, because that's churning that portion of the bottom of the roster.
Yeah, and I'm not going to speak much on Mertz because he's a Badger, so I don't really whatever. But really, it's possible. Where'd he transfer to? It was Florida.
Florida.
Florida State. Yeah, Florida. And who knows? When you get out of Wisconsin, maybe you end up playing a little bit better or something. I don't know. Who knows? Uh, but I suppose I can speak on this guy. Spencer Petras is another one. I've noticed him. Yeah, Mike just did a double take on that one because I mentioned.
I
But
didn't realize he was in this draft cycle.
yeah, he's Spencer Petras. I have to say, I had all kinds of hopes for when he came to Iowa because he had something special. If I remember right, he went to the same school that Jared Goff did, same high school, and like destroyed every single one of Goff's records. So when he came to Iowa, there was a lot of hope. But as I've said before, and I will continue saying for probably the next couple of years, there's one thing that hurt his development, and that's the Nepo baby Brian Ferentz. And when you've got a guy that basically just an offensive line coach coaching your offensive coordinator, is your O line coach, is your quarterback coach, is your wide receiver coach, is your passing game specialist, and has all these titles trying to teach a quarterback how to throw a ball, it just doesn't work that well. So the thing about Petrus is he had tons of arm talent. You could see he had tons of arm talent. He just needed somebody to help him refine it. And he just couldn't get it done at Iowa, where Iowa is going to run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, and maybe pass once in a great while. Honestly, a lot of us thought he was done because there towards the end of his time at Iowa, he suffered a shoulder injury and he became an what they call him, a player assistant or something like that, where they become an assistant to the coaching, but they're still technically on the roster. So I thought he was done, but then he ended up going in the transfer pool or portal, and guess where he ended up? The same place where the starting quarterback of the Green Bay Packers ended up, Utah State. And while the numbers for like completions and that weren't great, I think there were times that he was completing like 40 some percent of his passes. The yardages were up, the touchdowns were up, all this other things were up, and he showed that his arm, his shoulder was decent. I don't think he had the same power as when he started at Iowa, but he still had enough strength that he could be a quarterback in the NFL if he can get into a quarterback school and can get run through that process and have a little bit of time to say it. Is he a day one type of quarterback? Hell no. He's not going to be taken like that. But if somebody can not nab him on day 3 and say, all right, we've got our starter, we got a question mark at backup at our number 2, but we've got a guy that we think can be there. We just want a guy that be number 3 and just sit back and hold the clipboard and learn. I think Petrus probably could do it. I never was one that hated Petrus. Like I said, I had a lot of hope for him because he was heavily hyped coming out of high school, and you know, I did like him, but then it just started pissing you off because Iowa just couldn't use him right.
He really, really suffered from the downturn in your guys' quality of O line play because he missed what's it called? He missed all like Wirfs and I guess he played with Linderblom. How do you say the center's name?
Linderbaum, yeah,
Yeah. So, but he missed Alaric Jackson and Tristan Wirfs. I guess he overlapped a little, but oh, what's his
he was
face
a
was the starter.
freshman when,
Yeah,
yeah.
but yeah, it always is kind of a you like I said, it was one of those where it's like we're probably going to pressure him into some bad throws, but if he ever gets to set his feet, he could uncork one kind of thing. Like he's one of those kind of kids where it's like you said, the physical talent is there, and yeah, he'd have to go through the battery. I honestly didn't get to watch a lot of Utah State games, and so I don't know how the shoulder really looks after last year, because like you said, he had to take a whole year off. Like if you look at his stats, it's 18 to 22 at Iowa, nothing, and then this past season was at Utah State. So, and like you said, not the stats weren't anything to like write home about, but he had, and I know it's a different system and yada yada yada, but he had his highest career completion percentage by 8%, which is not nothing on at least 40 more throws than he had at any of his years at Iowa. And touchdown to interception ratio wasn't great, but also, I don't know who he was throwing to and stuff like that. So, and like we said, you're just throwing darts at this point where Green Bay is realistically going to be taking a quarterback. And so,
Well, you know who
and
one of his targets were?
oh,
Possible
Royals.
day 2 guy, Jalen
Yeah,
Royals.
that's right. So, but in terms of like you said, you're like looking for a specific kind of guy at this point. I like backup quarterbacks who give you a little extra dimension kind of thing and stuff. But in terms of what Green Bay's looking for, if they're looking for someone to take Clifford's spot, Petrus is a guy who in the Clifford mold has seen and done almost everything in college. And he went a step further than Clifford is. He actually was a coach at one point, so he's even got that in his back pocket, and it would be kind of a, I don't want to say useful is necessarily the right term, but I do think that that's kind of what they're looking for from that backup position is to be a guy who's like kind of able to talk the game with Love and go over the film with him and stuff like that. So yeah,
The only
I
thing
wouldn't
that's
say no at
hurting
that
him
point.
right now is he will be 26 this year.
Right. But Clifford,
So,
and yeah, is he he is Clifford's classmate, isn't he?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yes, I know that he's like the same age as Clifford now, kind of thing. But at the same time, it's sort of like whatever. It's your backup. I'm not losing sleep over the fact of how old the backup quarterback is and stuff. So actually, he's a year younger. He's 99. Clifford is
Yeah.
98. So, but yeah, I like I said, you're just throwing out options at this point. Another
Well, like
guy
we
that
said earlier, there's no real need for the Packers to pick one up unless
yeah,
there's a Malik Willis trade in the pipeline. I
yep,
mean, Goody has said that he'd like to get more draft picks, but Goody says that every year.
yeah.
He always wants to get more draft picks. So,
And
is
that may
there?
be one of the most truthful things that Goody actually, because he does every year, even the years he's moved up in the draft, it's because he's either created or in the draft creates a net positive of picks to trade up with. So
Yeah.
I do believe that that's something I like I said it would take a certain conversation, one that I'm not sure has been had because as we were just discussing with the Rogers discussion earlier, it seems like all the quarterback seats are kind of taken, but you never know. Maybe you know there may be more. What's it called? There may be more of a demand for a guy like Willis, who hypothetically has upside and potential longevity at his age and level of athleticism as opposed to a 40 whatever year old Aaron Rodgers. And then,
Well, right now it's the whole Pittsburgh thing. Is
yep,
Pittsburgh going to ride it out with try to wait for Rodgers, or do they call and say, "Hey, we don't like any of the guys in the draft right now.
we're
We'll
not going to
give
be in
you
position. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
we'll give you like a third round pick, this year's third round pick for, Malik."
Yep.
Are do you Would you fault Goody in saying yes?
Oh,
And
no,
the answer
absolutely
is
not.
no, because you just flipped a seventh round draft pick into a third round pick.
And as much as people are saying, like, but you can get a comp pick for him, it's like, well, he's
Are you going
not
to get it a
signing
third
for.
round?
Yeah, no, he's not one of those kind of quarterbacks that's signing a deal that's gonna like lock into a third round pick. And also, hypothetically, Green Bay should have free agency money to not to go big game hunting next offseason, but any comp pick, the what's it called? The formula will get thrown off by anything they do in free agency next year too. So if you lock in a day two pick for like this year, or even if it is for next year, you are locking in that you are definitely getting a day two pick. And like you said, it would be bad process if Goot says no to that kind of deal. Because like I said, for whatever that sect of Green Bay fans wants to say, they're not winning a Super Bowl with Malik Willis. Like, if they're not favorites to win one with Love, you're not gonna win one with a guy who's not the thrower, and like he doesn't do all the ability with his arm that Love does. You're not gonna win a Super Bowl with that guy either. So if LaFleur turns Willis from a seventh round out into a third round in, that's good GMing and good combination of GMing on his part and coaching on LaFleur's part. And like you said,
The only hope that you have is all of a sudden Malik Willis grows Jalen Hurts' arm talent,
yeah,
because he's already got the mobile ability. He just doesn't have the strong arm ability.
yeah, or the like touch ability because he does have a pretty good arm on his shoulder. So the only other the only other dart I really have in my quiver is this is a long running joke that I've had for 2 years is that the guy who fits. So if we go back and look at the guys that have been rumored as guys that LaFleur and Gutekunst have like, there's a few um there's a few traits that have stuck together that haven't always like kind of put you in the biggest like what that's a successful quarterback, but it's a strong-armed, big-bodied quarterback with questionable athleticism. Love has turned out. They've also been linked to. They've also have rumored to have been linked to what did I just say his name earlier?
Drew
Lock.
Lock.
Drew Lock was the big one. LaFleur's first year. That the year before, in 2018, they traded for Kaiser, who was supposedly big in the Packers draft room. And carrying on that tradition would be DJ Uyunglele, the former Clemson, former Oregon State, now former Florida State quarterback. And this would be your ultimate shot in the dark. He was the top, I think he was the top two-way quarterback prospect. It was sort of be like a Petrus, like, like I know that a lot of the luster has come off of Uyunglele. Some of it his doing, some of it the situations that he was in, kind of thing. But if you're looking for your give me the biggest athlete I can get at the end of the seventh round of the draft, DJU is that guy. Still got a big arm. Like I said, he gives you the ability to run a different kind of offense if he comes in. You can run some power QB read and QB option kind of stuff to, sort of get his feet wet as he gets in a game. But that would be the ultimate like flyer, get a highly physically talented kid in and see if LaFleur can mold him into a legitimate NFL quarterback. It would sort of be like your Aaron Brooks, Hasselbeck kind of reclamation project kind of thing. So yeah, that's really the last guy. And I guess another name that I'll throw into that hat too is Riley Leonard. I actually liked him a lot more when he was at Duke than what Notre Dame kind of had him do. I thought that Duke's coaches were a lot more they were a lot more creative with how they used him than Notre Dame. So to each their own. But yeah, those are the two guys, like I said, that check off a lot of the boxes I have in terms of like big arm and have the athleticism to bring a different dimension if they were to ever have to go into a game kind of thing.
And see, I mean, I've got like four guys that I could talk about. Two of them are long shot being drafted. They would have to take a tumble, and that's Tyler Show out of Louisville and Will Howard out of Ohio State. I mean, those guys are solid guys. Their Raz is amazing. They put out some solid tape, but that would have to be a day two type deal. And again, unless the Packers make a move to get rid of Willis, I I honestly would hope that the Packers could start doing what they used to do in the 90s, where they would draft a guy mid to late rounds, keep him around as a backup for a couple of years, and then trade him off for, a good haul of picks. But unfortunately, that trend has kind of fallen off with the Packers. But, those Show or Shaw or however you pronounce his name from Louisville and Howard would be those type of guys that I would get. I would draft those guys, let them get comfortable in the system, show them off a little bit in the season if you have to, and then trade them off for, a couple day two picks or whatever later on. But the two that I think that could either be preferred undrafted guys, maybe seventh round guys if they've got a, who knows what kind of trading Gutekunst still do, and maybe they end up with a couple extra seventh rounders or whatever. You got Cam Miller out of North Dakota State University, and then I was just watching this kid a little bit before, and that's Matt Morrissey out of Eastern Kentucky. Now Cam Miller is kind of falls into, I'm not saying talent wise, so I hope people understand that I'm not saying that, oh, this is the next. No, he falls into the Drew Brees type of side for quarterback because he's only like 6 foot and a half and weighs only like 190 some pounds. So, I mean, he's a smaller size quarterback. He's got scrambling ability. He's not super fast, but it's enough. I watched him take it for like 60 some yards up the middle because he had a wide open lane and he didn't have anybody catch him. He's got good accuracy, solid placement. Again, I think this arm strength is serviceable, but I don't think it's like super strong. But the thing that I found hard to watch a lot of these guys on was you didn't see a lot of deep passes from them. So it was hard to gauge what kind of strength. But there are a couple passes I did see from him that were deep, and it looked like he had to put a little bit more loft on it. So it makes you wonder if his strength is maybe a little out there. The other guy, Matt Morrissey out of Eastern Kentucky, what I really liked about him is he had a quick release. And I will say that, just to touch back on Will Howard, the one thing that I wish that he would do, speed up his release, because it looked like too often that wide receivers were having to wait for the ball to come to them. And it wasn't because he had a bad arm strength or
Yeah,
anything like that.
exactly.
It was because it was taking so long to get from the motion for the ball to show up to him. So back to Morrissey, he had a wonderful quick release. I loved it. It kind of reminded you of Rogers' quick release, where it was up and out before you even knew what was going on. Again, I'm not saying he's the next Aaron Rodgers. I'm just saying this is how you kind of show what you're talking about. He's not a speedster, but he was a thumper. I watched him like level a linebacker on a rush, and I sit there and laughed because that was amazing. Uh, he Again, I didn't really get to see him in game throw too many deep balls, but they did actually have his pro day tape on YouTube, so I was able to watch it, and he had pretty decent deep accuracy, or not accuracy, deep strength. That it wasn't like he had to wind up to do it. He could just fling it, and it was going deep. Now there were a couple of times, like on a rollout or something, where you saw he had to take a couple extra steps to get the ball, get enough oomph on the ball to get it down there. But when he was just in the pocket, dropping back, and let loose, he could let it loose for at least 50 to 60 yards. And that's what usually you ask of for your quarterback. You're not looking for an 80-yard deep ball pass or a Mike Vick on his knees throwing it into the stands type deal. You just want a guy that can get you 50 to 60 yards consistently. And so those two I could see being, like I said, late sixth, early seventh, or even preferred UDFAs if that's the way Green Bay goes about things. And I'm going to say I'm probably guaranteeing you haven't watched either one of them, so I don't expect you to throw too much input into it.
Nope, we're gonna just put a nice bow on that one. I trust your eye, my friend.
Well, the sad thing is, and I know I've said this for other positions, but with quarterbacks, it's usually hard because they can be tremendous college quarterbacks, but they struggle to put it together in the NFL system. How many quarterbacks have we seen be tremendous NCAA quarterbacks, but they don't even get drafted in the NFL because they can't put it together? So trying to find guys, I mean, I can sit there and watch quarterback tape all damn day, and hey, that's a hell of a pass. Hey, that's a good read. Hey, that's that's a tremendous play. But is he going to be able to do it in the NFL? Yeah, you can tell Marisol we're about done. Yes, I know I've kept you long enough.
She just doesn't want to appear on camera.
Oh, we don't even put the video out. And it's not like you swinging the little samurai around, so we're all good on that shit. But yeah, we're about done on this thing. Mike, are there any final things that you want to put out there for? Let's just say for the whole draft class, because I really don't think we're going to touch much on kickers and punters this next week.
Yeah, I've tried to think if I have any overarching stuff. I don't. I really don't know because like just trying to get the pulse of the organization this draft season and stuff. You know how
There's
some
no
years you
real
can
big
tell.
holes to fill.
No, and that's the thing. Like, there's gonna be a lot of. That's why I do think they're gonna take up more. Like they always do, but even more so. I feel like they're gonna go high ceiling route. Maybe a couple guys in the mid rounds who could come in and like really contribute right away, kind of thing. But I just have this feeling that they're going to expect a lot of internal development. You know, we've seen, we're used to seeing the Rashawn offseason training film, but there's some Lucas ones that are popping up all over the place and
He's
stuff like
looking
that.
ripped.
He looks like he cut about 15 pounds. Like I don't know how to really gauge that, but he looks like he might be down to the mid 260s kind of thing.
He looks like he
Um,
could eat me.
but yeah, it's like I do think like obviously they'll never say no to a draft pick coming in and tearing it up kind of thing, but I do think they're expecting a lot of improvement to come from the guys that they picked last year, the year before, and all that kind of stuff. One of the big stories is the Jordan Morgan potentially. Not that they're going to lay the red carpet out at left tackle, but they're really trying to light the runway in that direction.
And see, I kind of took it the opposite way. I took it as they're still trying to justify the pick because
That
I don't
too.
think
No,
I don't
and
I don't think they were prepared for both Walker and Ryan to prove out like they did last season.
and I agree to a certain like in a certain direction, but so I think it's I think they do really like him as a prospect, but also they're like really battening down the hatches on he's gonna play left tackle for the reasons you just brought up. But like you said, there aren't a million points on this roster where you're like, they've got to find especially with what they did in free agency. Maybe they're not the guys that we all wanted and, that kind of stuff. But I do feel like they did enough. And obviously, receiver is the one where you're kind of like, what's the plan there? Especially, I mostly say that because of the Watson injury. It'd be different if Watson was gonna play to start this season, but because he's out, you're like, okay, is the uptick we saw in in Dontavian Wicks down the stretch of last season, is that real? how much more can they get out of Dobbs, how much more can Reed do, and all that kind of stuff. Is Musgrave going to stay healthy this season? But that's all internal improvement. That's all that side of the street. So obviously there's going to be guys that they're hoping can contribute early, but I do think for the most part they're going to be expecting internal upgrades, and then a lot of the guys they're going to be, it pisses off a lot of fans, but they're going to be looking at guys who are going to improve this roster in another couple years, kind of thing. That's just where I see, if the right guys fall to their spot, if a Will Johnson falls to their range, like that's a guy who's going to contribute right away. But I feel like it's going to be a lot of future sighted stuff unless they just break the mold with like taking a Colston Loveland or a Matt Golden in round one kind of thing, which I just, it really depends how the board, especially on the Golden side of it, but the board would have to fall in such a specific way for them to go either of those routes unless they're like, you know what? We really think that this is our year. And not that they're like, that's the one guy, that's the player away kind of thing, but they're like, we so believe in the guys that we're bringing back on the roster this year that with a couple guys who can contribute day one, we can really get this thing rolling and, to be a Super Bowl contender. And not just like by the end of the season, they look that way. From week one, it's like, this team is different this year. So, long answer short, I expect Good to kind of go with his like he's done his work for this year, last year, the year before, and in free agency. And come, draft day when when Goodell is calling names in Titletown, USA, it's going to be with the eye for a couple years down the road, and if they contribute early, great, kind of, that usual approach.
And really, the only position, well, I guess there's technically two, but I think the one big one that really sticks out for something that is going to be a year or two down the line is wide receiver, because both Watson and Dobbs are free agents at the end of the season. Watson's obviously coming back from the injury. Do they resign one? Do they resign both? Do they resign none of them? Does Wicks take the next step up? Does Reed take the next step up? Obviously, I'm not thinking McCole Hardman is going to be the savior for this wide receiver class. I still have hope for Malik Heath, but I think that's becoming less and less of a chance. Bo Melton, I like what Bo can do, but I just don't think he's going to be anything more than a 4 or 5
He and
on the
Hardman are
team.
basically battling for the same roster spot at this point,
Right. So
especially if they draft someone relatively early.
and see, that's what I was getting to. I was going to say that if they're going to take a chance on a position that could help them this year, but is more looking towards the future, wide receiver is the way to go. And really, with what Goody said the other day about they're not really thinking edge is too much of a need because he thinks they can generate enough pass rush with the guys that they have. I even question a little bit of the pass. Do they take an edge rusher in the draft? I mean, in the first round, I could see them
Right.
still taking a guy in the draft, but is it at a first round pick? Defensive line, maybe, because that's where the giant holes seem. But I think you can get guys a little bit later in the draft that are going to do you the same as what you can get at 23, unless somebody major falls. So I think that's where we're setting. So I think we can pretty much wrap this up. You can, I hope everybody enjoyed our draft lead up, run up, whatever you preview. We do still have a couple episodes to go, but this is probably going to be our last of the positional groups. So, let us know. Did we miss anybody? Did we, not, did we talk shit about somebody you really like? Let us know on that. Thank you to all our past guests and stuff like that for coming in and talking draft with us. You can find the show at Ohana_Packers on Twitter, Ohana Packers Edition on all the other social media platforms, me on Blue Sky at iowajoe.bsky.social. Mike is anywhere and everywhere, Kawano Mike. Please go over to the website, ohanapackers.org, for all our great articles, past episodes, merch shop. Get us, go buy some merch, help support the show. The little kids got to eat over there. Mike's got two of them, two typhoid Marys over there. We got to make sure they stay healthy so Mike doesn't miss any more shows. So, if you buy merch, that helps create the medical fund for those two germ factories. Uh, please go buy merch, support the show. You can always get a hold of us. Let us know what you think. We're going to be getting to, hear what the draft's in 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks, something like that. We're going to need topics for episodes. So, shoot us some topics you'd like to see us cover. And like Mike would say, Mike, why don't you give your tip since you've been gone and haven't been able to do it, your typical outro.
So we're gonna say as usual, go pack go and aloha.
Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for OPE. Let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for OU. No,